Ethan here. I'm going to do a simple overview of the Monoprice all-to-SDI multi-format converter and scaler, as well as dig into some interesting things I found while looking inside the unit. Simple overview. It's a multi-format converter for video and audio. The input side is composite, VGA plus audio, DVI plus audio, and HDMI. Output of this unit is SDI, which is a commercial digital format of high definition video, which most consumers wouldn't be concerned with it, but more in the prosumer and pro video world, it's used to transport digital video long distances. And it really is handy. The cables are much better than HDMI, and it's all around, it's a pretty good format, and it's scaled very well up to 4K and 8K video. The Monoprice unit, it accepts the multi-inputs, and it has the ability to select the output to 720p or 1080p by a button press on the front, and double tap of the button will switch between 50 and 60 frames per second. The downside of this is some equipment is looking for other frame rates such as 59.95 frames per second, which is used on, say, hardware by Blackmagic and some others, so it doesn't seem like you can adjust that. Another thing to note that is a definite downfall is that it does not allow you to switch the aspect ratio when you're doing composite in. So if you're feeding an old VCR, old game console, other equipment that the output's normally going to be 4:3 ratio, it does not scale that, and no black bars on the side, so it's pretty much stretched to fill the video output. So that's definitely a downside. And last, and I suppose least, a lot of this type of equipment, especially switchers, some of them feature an RS-232 input on the back, which allows you to integrate it with various automation systems. So companies like AMX and Crestron, their touch panel systems would allow you to send commands to these units to switch the inputs remotely. So if you're kind of doing a permanent install where you have looking for remote command of these functionality, it's not there. Or is it? So after getting these two units, which are slated for an upcoming event that me and a friend are doing, I kind of got curious as to what might be inside. Could it be possible to control this with serial? The answer is kind of. Here's my simple setup right here with one of these units running. I'm feeding the output here down into an HDMI converter, which takes the SDI video in and produces a standard SDI video out. I fed the other one over into Blackmagic rig. It does not work right since it's not able to lock on to the 60 frames a second versus 59.9. So here's GameCube is feeding in right now. So you can see when I change the resolution between 720, 50 and 60 hertz. Simple press the button. Now it's in 1080. But unfortunately the image is fully scaled. Upon opening the unit, the first thing I noticed was some pin headers that are unpopulated, which are actually silkscreened on the board as if they are serial ports. So they're actually kind of left there for fun. And there's actually two sets of them in this unit. The one here, which is kind of near this heatsink chip, and then the other one is off to the right, kind of towards the output side. With a 5-volt serial converter wired up to the serial port in the middle, tied to terminal program running at 115/200. Upon turning it on, surprise, there's some debugging and console output that is actually pushed out as the unit boots. Well, fun and all, the more exciting part comes in when it produces a very detailed menu. In this menu, one can easily find some options in here to easily switch the inputs. So the kind of crazy thing is it is possible to automate the selection of the input source through serial. So you'd need a RS-232 to 5-volt serial converter, and then from there you could tie it to AMX or Crestron, or if you were using a PC, you could easily, or Linux or Pi or whatever, You could easily just use a USB 5-volt TTL converter. Now, the more interesting thing is there's a lot of options in here that don't really relate to what one might see on the front. And this is where it gets crazy. So the menu's kind of crazy. There's a lot of options and they don't always work. So some things do, some don't. So for instance, it is possible to say switch it to the HDMI input, which I just executed and it did so on the TV. Now, other things such as brightness, contrast, color, and volume, none of those work, unfortunately. So, where it got very strange is when you look at the menu, there are options for such thing as menu. Now, this unit doesn't feature such a menu, but upon executing it, what the hell? Huh. It actually looks like I did get into something, so maybe it is possible to... So I just found a new menu that I didn't see before, which is kind of crazy. Exit menu. Select. Huh. There's a menu which, unfortunately, it just has some color settings which are taking effect, I think. However, so there's something new right there, so I guess it is possible to actually get some more menus. However, the options for, say, aspect ratio, S-aspect, unfortunately, they're producing no results that I can see. So, while it looks like it would have an aspect ratio function, the command doesn't seem to do anything in this menu. There are commands in here that do some crazy stuff, though. So, the, how do I get to it? Oh. So there's actually an option for a select USB. Now there's no USB input on the back of the device. However, when I execute it, up pops a whole new subsystem, which is in no way exposed out the front of the unit. The subsystem has a video and music player in it. Why? I don't know. Strange. So originally when I ran it, it said it could not find USB. So I was thinking about it, and there is an actual second header in there that is not labeled as if it's serial. So I went ahead and wired up a USB port to it and added a storage device to it, in this case a thumb drive. So as you can see, it's actually possible to select video files on this. Wait. Let's see. However, unfortunately, when it does play, it doesn't seem to actually push the output out. And that may be because it's jumping out of the resolution. So I can execute a play command. Oh wait, that's different. So I just told it to play a file. Wait, what the hell? It's playing. No. Is it actually working? Alright, so apparently it is actually possible to get this video player to work. In my prior testing, maybe I had run other commands that had blocked this. It is now working though, which is very strange. So, in addition to HDMI scaling, can I get the video to work? So, looks like I actually got the unit to somehow manage to scale the video, but however, it isn't true 4:3 on the screen, and I don't know that you could reliably do that, because I think it happened from me actually running the video player system, which for some reason apparently the audio works, however video does not, which I assume it's because of some sort of clock rate issue with the thing, or maybe it's missing codecs. So, then when I play a video, it'll bomb out. Oh, you can't see it as using MPlayer. So that's the hidden USB media player within the Monoprice SDI to all to SDI unit. There are some options to get into menus for configuration and some other, you can kind of walk through some configuration, I shouldn't say configuration, diagnostics and debugging. However, I didn't really see too much. It does look like you could possibly load new firmware off of the USB drive. The system is made up of multiple chips that are kind of for different purposes. So there is a specific SDI output ICs. There's another chip in there that's strictly just for the DVI input, I believe. Maybe a buffer for DVI and HDMI. And then there's an M-Star 182, which is the chipset that's doing the media playback and possibly being used to do the composite in. It looks like that chipset is, when I googled it, is used by some of the cheap kind of video projectors that use like halogen lamps and stuff, the low end stuff. But so from these config options, you can get kind of some strange, cool looking debugging kind of things. I think there's one that'll actually let you kind of look at a file system, but a lot of it doesn't seem to work. The infrared testing, which there is no IR transmitter receiver wired physically on the board, but maybe it supports it, or the chipset supports it, given that it was for a different project. But yes, this is kind of it for the strange internal guts of the SDI scaler. Maybe there's some ability to do other things. I played with it for a good bit, and it was kind of fun. But as far as doing full integration, since you cannot change the output that I could find, so you can't adjust it between 720 and 1080. Apparently, you can kick it into a 4:3 aspect, which is pretty cool. It'd be nice to be able to go back and forth, but to be honest, for my use, it's probably better to have it actually ratioed properly. And I did not get any output or input that I could find off of the other pin header, which goes to the other serial port. there's a good chance that is strictly for the SDI side, and that might be where the ability to control the output resides. That might actually open the door for doing like 59.95 or some of these other maybe interlaced modes, but I didn't see any immediate output when I toyed with it. But then again, I never got the menu to work on this before because I don't think the menu seems to only be for the composite input. I think I might have been sitting on the one of the digital inputs. So that's a brief poke at it. Yeah, if anyone else actually, for whatever reason, jumps into one of these things and manages to find something cool, drop it in the comments.